This is the Louie T Network. You are now officially in the lab room. It's that time again. It's that time again to go hard in the off season, cause we trying to win. We gon' go so hard, we don't take no days off. Hopefully one day it's all gonna pay off.
Could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2017 NFL Draft by using our baseball grading score. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in this draft wrap-up series. We cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men, but they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we will get a score for each and every single player selected by said team in the draft. We'll tally up all of those scores. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall score and grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there at home, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format, or as I like to call it, the Up format. Simply be the first. Not the second, not the third, but the first, the absolute first. And please spare me the screenshots of you being first on YouTube. Just type in the following things, the phrase next, okay? I've actually had someone this year and in past years not type the word next, but be first. Doesn't matter if you don't follow directions. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Next in the team you'd like to see next. Bucks, next. Titans, next. Boys, next. Colts. You get the picture. Just be first and follow directions. So with that out of the way, because of you, the viewers out there, the next team up in the series is the Atlanta Falcons, a team that made it all the way to the Super Bowl a season ago and just fell short after seemingly building an insurmountable lead, allowing Tom Brady and company to come back. I know it's a wound that you hate to have reopened, but in order to move on and heal, you must first admit your mistakes and relive the past so that you can move forward. And so we do that now. We talk about the hurt, the pain that was the Super Bowl a season ago. And we now move on to what could be another big time season for the Atlanta Falcons. And it starts here with the draft. And this is a team that over the last couple of years has done a phenomenal job drafting players, especially last year. We saw what an impact that draft class had on their season. They're hoping to have similar results from the 2017 NFL draft. Let's take a look. It's a very concise, compacted draft. And I love when teams go in, get the players they want, and get out. There's no need to have a 12-player draft because 12 guys aren't going to make your roster. You go in, you pluck out 6 or 7, possibly 8 guys that have a legitimate shot to grow within your organization, and you move on. That's what the Falcons have done here. That's what they did last year. Let's talk about their draft in 2017. We start in the first round, 26th overall selection. UCLA edge rusher Takaris McKinley is the pick. This is a guy that I already broke down in the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look, please, by all means, do so. It is in my vault. Go to the playlist on the Louie T Network. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting on? Go ahead and do that right now as we speak. But it's in the archives. Go check out the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. Go to the playlist section. All the videos that I was able to get done before the draft is in there, including that of Takaris McKinley. So I'm not going to break him down here. But remember, in the Super Bowl, one of the keys to the game was the lack of pressure on Brady in the second half of that football game when they made that 25-point comeback. You need to get pressure on the quarterback. That's the name of the game in this league. It's having elite quarterback play, and it's getting to the other team's quarterback. If you can do those two things, you will be very successful in this league. The Falcons failed to do that in the second half of Super Bowl 51, and they were tired. That was a tired defense, and so things happen. But bottom line is, this is a team that they're starting to put together all the pieces of the puzzle defensively. We know about their offense and how dynamic and explosive they can be at times, but the defense was lagging behind. They started to pick it up at the end of the season, and in the first half of that Super Bowl, they were tremendous, but they lacked that true closer, that true pass rush that can affect the game. And they have one guy that's doing work right now in Vic Beasley, needs a tag team partner. The Falcons envision that man being Tack McKinley out of UCLA. Now, I told you I think he is not a finished product. I don't think that his actual skills coming out of college warranted a first-round pick. I think his athleticism, however, does. So I understand the Falcons' viewpoint and vantage point here, taking him in the first round, but I didn't think he was a first-round type of player, and I still do not. And because of that, in the first round, 26th overall selection, UCLA edge rusher Tack McKinley for me is a triple. The guy's got athleticism. He's got motivation and drive. I love his spirit. I love his determination. I love the energy that he brings to the table. We saw it on draft night. We continued to see it over the life of his short NFL stint thus far, with him posting on Twitter and all kinds of things. Love all of that. Bottom line is, this guy is lacking a lot of the things you need to be an elite pass rusher at the next level. He's no Vic Beasley, that's for certain. But with time and effort and coaching, maybe he could be exactly what the doctor ordered for the Atlanta Falcons, opposite of one Vic Beasley. You go to the third round, the next pick in the draft for the Atlanta Falcons, 75th pick overall. LSU linebacker Duke Riley is the selection. The Falcons have made it a habit of going and shopping at the SEC store. It's been very good to them, whether you're talking Jake Matthews or you're talking about Poole last year, their corner that was undrafted. They also have had success on the offensive side of the football, going and getting guys from the SEC. Julio Jones comes to mind as well, but make no mistake about it, they've had a lot of success shopping at the LSU store in particular. You think about their cornerback that they selected in the second round a couple of years ago. You think about last year, a guy that came in and was huge for them, whether you're talking their first round pick at the safety position in Keanu Neal, or you're talking about their second round pick out of LSU in Deion Jones. And this is a team that has had success getting players from the SEC. Here's another player, and particularly from LSU. This is a guy here in Duke Riley, similar to what you did last year in the second round with Deion Jones, a guy with 1 year of experience. Let's talk about Duke Riley and why the Falcons are extremely excited about this selection and what this guy may be able to bring to the table for their defense. You start with his athleticism as his first pro. 4.5, 840, his 3-cone drill along with his 20-yard shuttle, among the best at the linebacker position at the combine. So you see a little bit of the athleticism there on display. And if you watch the tape, you see athleticism all day long with Duke Riley. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to kick in, but it is absolutely there if you watch the tape. A good closing burst is the next pro, and that kind of lends itself to that athleticism that I just spoke of. He's a guy that unblocked, gets in the backfield, shoots his gun, really instinctual, which is the next pro, got really good instincts. And you have to have those types of qualities. You got to have instincts. You got to have a good closing burst if you're not going to be the biggest guy in the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But again, this is a guy with a really, really good closing burst. This is a guy that'll come out of nowhere and close the gap between the ball carrier and himself, get to the ball carrier. And he does a really good job of squaring up, wrapping up, and driving guys to the turf and not allowing them to drag him along for an extra yard or two. Generally, when he makes contact, that ball carrier goes backwards. The Alabama game, which he was phenomenal in, comes to mind, watching him wrap up Bo Scarborough, who, if you watch college football, you know is a massive, mammoth man, shades of Derrick Henry, but I think he might even be bigger than Derrick Henry. Bo Scarborough is a thoroughbred, and yet he scooped him up by his waist and dumped him on his back and that's what you get from Duke Riley. Relentlessness and edginess is the next pro, and that kind of goes with what I just mentioned. This is a guy that at 6 feet, 232 pounds, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but it doesn't matter to him. He plays the game like he's 6'3", 245 pounds. So he's a guy that is very relentless on the football field, gives you everything he's got on every single snap. You don't see this guy taking plays off. He's a guy that is very edgy. They talked about him when they drafted him as a guy that comes with a little bit of swagger, and I think that's sort of what you get from Duke Riley on the football field. To me, he's solid in zone coverage. I think he's got a knack for doing a good job of running with guys in his zone and zone matching. Not the best in man-to-man. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But in terms of zone matching and being able to read the quarterback's eyes, get good depth on his drops, and follow the play, he does a really good job of that. You see that in the Ole Miss game when he gets the interception. Is able to match the zone. Quarterback rolls out to his left. He's able to match that receiver coming into his zone, pick him up, undercut the route, pick it off. And that's what you get from him in zone coverage. Special teams value, before he got his chance to start in 2016, he's one of the best players in the nation on special teams, one of the most productive on special teams. So right away, if nothing else, you're getting a guy that's going to contribute on special teams from day number one. And that always is a key factor in this league on how good teams are. Special teams goes under the radar sometimes. We don't talk about it a ton, but it impacts games, and you normally don't talk about your special teams until you lose a ball game because of it. And so you need guys that are going to come in, fill up your roster, not only start, but also give you some quality snaps on special teams as well. This is a guy that can do that. And finally, upside is his final pro. Again, I generally don't like talking about upside because, again, you draft every single player with upside, with the hopes that they'll be better than they were in college, that you can make them better. You can get them in your facility. You can get your hands on them. You can improve the way they play the game of football. So every player, in a sense, has upside. But for a guy that has only started one season at LSU, there is tremendous upside here, and I think the Falcons feel the same way, which is why they spent the 3rd round pick on Duke Riley. As we go to his cons, you jump into his size. That's the first thing that jumps off the screen. And I don't want to beat him up for 6 feet, 232 because, again, that's the new norm in this league. You're seeing the league shift from the big, bulky, 6'2", 245, 253 pound linebackers. No more are the days of Levon Kirkland inside at linebacker weighing 280 pounds as your inside middle linebacker. Those days are now dead. It's now a faster league. It's a passing league, and you need speed on the defensive side of football to combat all of the speed on the offensive side of football. These athletes on offense at the tight end and receiver positions are getting bigger, stronger, faster. So you need to combat that with athletes on the opposite side. So you're seeing a lot more 6 foot, 6'1", 229, 231, 233, or as in the case of Duke Riley, 6 feet, 232 pound linebackers. So this is not a situation where you're like, wow, this guy's really light. Don't know if he can play in the league. This is the new norm, okay? This is not an aberration anymore. This is the going rate for a linebacker. So I don't want to beat him up, but again, on tape, you do see his size affect him taking on blockers. Look, the offensive linemen aren't getting any smaller. They're getting faster, but they're not getting any smaller. They're still 310, 315 pounds. They're still big, physical guys that move 230-pound linebackers out of the way. So his size is a detriment to him at times, especially when taking on blockers in the run game. He's not an explosive linebacker. And when I say that 4.58 can be a little misleading sometimes. It's build-up speed. He's not a guy that's going to quick trigger you and go from point A to point B just like that. It's when he gets an opportunity to take 4 or 5 steps. That's when you see him really uncork that speed and run that 4.58. It's not a quick twitch linebacker here with Duke Riley. It's not a situation where he's able to go from a short span of 2 yards in a blink of an eye. But if you let him run for 7 yards, from his middle linebacker position all the way out to the numbers because it's a toss, he's going to get out there. He's going to make a play because if he's not touched, he gets to build up that speed and close the distance on that back. But if you're asking him to get from point A to point B in a hurry, he doesn't possess that quick twitch ability. And so he's not an explosive linebacker. He's not a Reuben Foster or one of those guys that's this new age, new breed of linebackers who are extremely fast and quick and gifted. He's not one of those types of players. He takes poor pursuit angles, and when you're not the fastest guy in the world, when you aren't the absolute quickest, you can't take poor angles. You've got to be clean in everything that you do. When you're undersized and you're not the best athlete in terms of speed, you need to take proper angles to make up for the lack of speed, because if you have a poor angle but you're really fast, you can make up for that with just pure unadulterated speed. But when you are lacking in that department, in quickness, you need to take proper angles, or else you'll be like a Duke Riley, who a lot of times on tape, you'll see him diving at the ankles of someone and just barely missing. You go to the Alabama tape on that first touchdown. It's a 0-0 game late in the fourth quarter. Jalen Hurts cuts it back on him and Kendall Beckwith. The first person that had an opportunity on that play, Duke Riley. He winded up too wide on the play, tried to come and make a tackle, took a poor angle, had to dive at his ankles. He jumps over that tackle attempt. You watch him on tape a ton of times, dive at a guy and take just a slightly off angle, puts him behind the ball carrier, and then dives and misses. And so he needs to take better pursuit angles. And again, to me, that comes after having this last con rectified, and that's he's got limited experience. I think the more he plays, then he'll become better at taking pursuit angles. It's one of those situations where you become better at doing something because you've done it enough times to know how to do it correctly. And right now, when a guy's only started 1 year, these types of things show up. And so with more playing experience, I think Duke Riley becomes a much better linebacker. You can kind of see that at the end of the season. He got better and better. There were some games where he really stood out. The Ole Miss game stands out for me. The Alabama game is really what said, man, I really like this guy. I like him a lot. And I remember saying that, watching that game live, not necessarily having to go back and watch tape, but literally watching that game live. I'm like, man, this number 40 guy is everywhere. That turned out to be Duke Riley. So for me, there's something about Duke Riley. I can't really put my finger on it, but I really like this guy. I like him a lot. And in the third round, 75th pick overall, LSU linebacker Duke Riley for me is a triple. The Falcons hit gold last year with Deion Jones, a guy that I told you on this very program last year this time that I absolutely loved. I don't love Duke Riley as much as I do Deion Jones, because Deion Jones was an athletic freak and Deion Jones was extremely physical. Riley is physical, but he doesn't have the same physical build and makeup and speed that Deion Jones had a season ago. But I'll tell you this much, Duke Riley has every single bit of relentlessness that Deion Jones has. And he also played at LSU, big time competition, big time school, and a big time conference. I like Duke Riley. And again, I can't put my finger on it, but this guy has the it factor. I think he's going to be another solid acquisition in addition to this Falcons defense as we move on to the fourth round. 136th overall selection, Oregon State offensive lineman Sean Harlow is the selection. You start with his size. That's the first pro, 6'4", 303 pounds. This is a guy that I think does a really good job of double teaming and then getting to the second level. It does a good job of washing down that defensive end along with that guard. He takes that double team and then uses it to propel him to the second level, where I think he does some good work there as well. You saw some runs really pop off behind him because he does a really good job of sealing off and then getting to that second level block. Nasty disposition. He's a guy that finishes blocks, throwing guys on the ground, does a really good job of just being physical and playing until the whistle, which is what you want to see from your offensive lineman. He's got versatility to me. This is a guy that is going to have to kick inside at the next level. We'll talk about why a little bit later on, but he practiced at every single offensive line position in 2014 before he got hurt. And so this is a guy that you feel like can play every single position on the offensive line. But again, I think at the next level, he's going to be relegated to just guard and center duties, more particularly probably guard at the next level is going to be his calling card. But this is a guy that comes with some versatility for sure. Started at both tackle positions at Oregon State, left and right tackle, and was a standout at left tackle to finish up his career. So this is a guy that does come with some versatility to the next level. And then finally, his dad played in the National Football League, was an outstanding collegiate football player, ended up being a first-round pick of the New England Patriots in the early 90s. So bloodlines running rampant through the blood of one Sean Harlow as we go to his cons. Short arms. And a lot of times you hear us talk about short arms with offensive linemen and why does this matter? Why does this come into play? What does it matter if a guy's 6'4", but he only got 32-inch arms? Why does this matter? Well, Sean Harlow is the perfect example and a poster child for why short arms can't move to the next level and remain at tackle, okay? 32-inch arms on Sean Harlow is his first con. Here's why this is a problem as we move on to the next con. Consistently bull rushed. I watched this man get his ass whooped in terms of getting jacked up. Now, again, a lot of these plays didn't result in the quarterback getting sacked, but it did force the quarterback to flush out of the pocket, or it did force the quarterback to get rid of the football a lot faster than he wanted to. Sean Harlow was on skates. Literally, I thought I was watching ATL because this man was on skates just about every single game. At least 5 to 7 times he was on skates, okay? And I watched at least 4 games of Sean Harlow. He was on skates, and it didn't matter how big the defender in front of him was. I saw small guys get up under his pads. I seen long arm guys get up under his pads. When you have 32-inch arms, what it allows the defender to do is contact you first. They treat you like a little brother. They put their fingers or their palm of their hand on your forehead, and you got short arms, and they're able to get you, and you can't do a damn thing about it. And they would get up into his pads, and he would try to recover, and we'd be like this, and he'd be flailing, and he couldn't stop the bleeding, and they would bull rush him all the way into the lap of the quarterback, who would have to either get rid of the football or get out of the pocket. And he's bull rushed by just about everybody. It's a bad look. He's gonna have to kick inside the guard because of those shorter limbs. And finally, he's got plotty feet. He's really slow on the outside. Another reason I don't trust him at tackle is because speed can beat him on the outside. His kick slide is not impressive. His feet don't move fast enough for me. And finally, he had a broken leg in 2015 that he did come back and play well off of in 2016. So that's just something to know that's on the Carfax. Yeah, you just need to know about that. But he played well in 2016, so hopefully that is behind him. But in the 4th round, 136 pick overall, Oregon State offensive lineman Sean Harlow for me is a double. I see this as a guy that's going to come in, compete at the guard position. Look, you need to upgrade your offensive line. It's no secret. Matt Ryan continues to be hit on a continuous basis. Chris Chester is no one starter in this league any longer. And so you need to upgrade the guard position. It's no secret. This is a guy that's going to compete, and I fully expect him to have every opportunity to take one of those guard positions in 2017 and moving forward. You go to the 5th round, 149th pick overall. San Diego State cornerback DeMonte Casey is the selection. Falcons had 3 5th-round picks. This is the first of those picks. This is a guy that I absolutely love on tape. And this was a deep cornerback draft. And a guy like this, you could argue because of a number of, circumstances dropped in this draft. But make no mistake about it, this is a guy that is extremely talented. Let's talk about him. For me, the first pro is his quickness. In and out of breaks. It's just phenomenal to watch this guy. His short area quickness, outstanding. You watch him drive on slants and break them up. You watch him drive on slants and pick it off. You watch him drive on comebacks. And those are the most impressive ones. Anybody can drive on a slant. Okay, if you're playing off and you read the break of a receiver and you guess right, because it could easily be a sluggo, but you see the slant, you break on it, you drive, the quarterback puts it out a little too far, boom, you got yourself a pick. Okay, anybody can do that. All right, it's the guy that can run, turn his back to the quarterback, and stop, plant, pivot, and come back to the football and pick it off. Run the route for the receiver. Those are the guys that impress me the most on comebacks and things of that nature. I watched him pick off Josh Allen not once but twice in a game versus Wyoming. And you remember that name because Josh Allen, mark my words, will be the first pick in the 2017 NFL draft, a season from now in the 2018 NFL draft. But that's nor here nor there. He picks off a talented, strong arm quarterback in Josh Allen. And it's just all quickness. It's all drive, plant, and come back and take that football. And this is a guy that does that as well as anybody. Speaking of which, the next pro, he's a dog. He's a dog. All right. This is a guy that is aggressive in the run game. And despite his diminutive stature, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, he doesn't give a damn. Body's on the line. I'm going out there and I'm knocking dudes down. I'm getting guys on the ground, whether you're trying to block, whether you got the football. I'm in there. I'm being physical. I'm being aggressive. But that's not the only reason he's a dog. He's a dog because he goes after the football. Ball's in the air. Damontae Kazee thinks it's his. And I love that about him. More so than any other quality that he has is the fact that this guy goes after the football. That is fun to watch from a cornerback. This is a guy with a ton of ball production. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but he's a physical, aggressive player in the run game and equally as aggressive going after the football, which you know can be a serious pro and a con. We'll talk about that, the give and take between him doing what he needs to do to make plays on the ball and then giving up big plays because of that a little bit later on. But I love what he brings to the table. His zone capability and keying quarterbacks' eyes. It's the next pro. When this guy's in zone and he's able to key the quarterback's eyes, he is tremendous. He is dangerous. This is the type of guy that you think to yourself, man, this guy's a difference maker. All right. And with what the Falcons have on their football team at the cornerback position with the Desmond Trufant guy coming back off of injury, and you lock up the guy opposite of him, who I really like in Alford. And so now all of a sudden you stick a guy like Damontae Kazee in the slot. You got Jalen Collins, who I talked about earlier as a LSU draft pick a few years ago. Now all of a sudden your cornerback situation is healthy, one of the healthiest in the league. And this is a guy in Damontae Kazee that I think is going to come in and not only win the slot job, but be on the field a ton for this Falcons team moving forward and be an integral part of them making plays and helping turn teams over and getting them off the field on third downs and forcing them to have to punt the football. He's an LLCer. That's the next pro. He looks, he locates, and then he contests the football. And he's not looking to just contest. He's looking to molest and take the football away. And again, that's something that I love to see out of cornerbacks. You can't pick off what you don't see. This guy not only looks, but he locates and he goes and gets the football. Ball skills and productivity. I've been ranting and raving about his ball skills this entire time. Let's talk about some numbers just to give you a little bit of a visual as to what this guy's bringing to the table. 17 career interceptions, all right? 17 career interceptions. Remember Mackenzie Alexander from the draft a season ago out of Clemson that went in either the second or third round to the Minnesota Vikings. And we sat here and talked about his lack of ball production and how he had no interceptions, but he was a guy that felt like he was one of the best corners in the draft. Well, this guy had 17 career interceptions at San Diego State. I mean, the ball production here was outstanding. 7 interceptions in 2016, 8 more the previous year in 2015. This guy is in it. So that lets you know that this guy is no joke. He's making plays on the football consistently. 29 PBUs over his career. He's just making plays on the football, whether he's knocking it away or picking it off. You're not getting the ball. That's generally how it goes when Damontae Kazee is around. And in 3 career touchdowns, 2 interception returns to the crib, and then a punt return for a touchdown as well. So he gives you a little bit of versatility there. Speaking of which, special teams value. I don't think this is a guy you want running back punts necessarily, but in a pinch, if 1 or 2 of your punt returners go down, or you just need a competent guy back there, here's Damontae Kazee sitting there waiting for you to call his number. And also, he blocked a kick in his career on a field goal. So this is a guy that offers you some special teams value in addition to being a guy that's probably going to be a gunner going down there. And I told you he's physical. He's looking to make tackles. And then finally, you go to his cons. And let's talk about why this guy is a 5th round pick and not a 3rd or 2nd or even a 1st round pick. Okay, again, a deep draft, but let's start with his size. His size is probably going to relegate him to the slot, which is not a bad thing. Okay, at San Diego State, he played out wide. He was their best corner, obviously. And so this is a guy that's probably going to have to kick inside because he's 5'10", 184. Okay, much like we talked about with the Titans and their 1st round pick, it's a vast difference because with their 1st round pick out of USC, Adoree Jackson, you're getting a guy that's a track athlete running a 4.42. And so the athleticism is off the charts. Plus, he's got upside. 1 year of really playing, just focusing in on the cornerback position. Casey, not a track athlete. Okay, he's a 4.54 guy. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the 5'10", 184, smaller guy, probably gonna have to live in the slot, which is fine by me because the Falcons have tremendous guys out wide. And if one of those guys goes down, like it happened to you last year, where you were missing Desmond Trufant for a good portion of the season, a guy like Damontae Casey has no problem sliding outside and holding it down for you at the cornerback position out wide. But he lacks long distance speed. That's the next con. A 4.54 guy, like I said, not extremely slow, but by NFL standards now at the cornerback position with all these speedy receivers, 4.54 is technically slow, even though it's not really that slow. But usually if a guy's going to be running a 4.54, then he needs to be long and active. Well, Damontae Casey's 5'10", so he doesn't fit that criteria either. So this is a guy that I think his size is going to hurt him. His long distance speed is probably even more detrimental to him playing on the outsides, which a lot of these guys in the slot don't have great long distance speed, but they're extremely quick, which is what Damontae Casey is as well. And then finally, eye discipline. If there's one thing that I think is a knock on Damontae Casey, it's his eye discipline. He'll be the first to tell you. I actually saw an interview with him talking about what he said was his weakness when coaches would ask him in the interview process leading up to the draft. He'd say, yeah, it's my eye discipline because I want to make plays. I'm looking to go and take the football away. And in order to do that, a lot of times you key quarterback's eyes. So when they fake you on that slant and it's a sluggo, well, you just got. Or you think it's an out and it's an out and up, you just got. And I saw him get got on an out and up versus Nevada, that same game where I talked about him making some plays. Well, he also gave up a touchdown down the sideline. Thought he had help over the top by the safety. Safety gets there late. He gets beat on an out and up. Boom, touchdown. So his eye discipline can get him in trouble. You take the good with the bad. This is a guy that makes plays on the football, but he will give it up. And again, doesn't have the makeup speed once he gets behind a receiver that can run to go and catch up on the play. But in any event, damn all of that. In the 5th round, 149th pick overall, San Diego State cornerback Damontae Casey for me is another triple. This is a guy, look, you lost the Super Bowl last year because of your inability to get stops in the second half of that game versus the Patriots. A guy like Damontae Casey, a guy like Takars McKinley may be the difference between you winning and losing a football game like that. And so this is a type of player that's going to come in and help what is already a young, hungry, and ascending defense. This is a guy that's going to come in and I think help that defense take another step in Damontae Casey. You move to the next 5th round pick, 156th overall, Wyoming running back Brian Hill is the selection. He was fun to watch. You start with his first pro, his size. You know I'm an upright running back type of guy. I love my upright runner. 6'1", 219 fits that bill to a T. He's got the size to be a 3-down back in his league. Of course, the Falcons have a slew of backs right now, all of which do things that help them offensively. And I think Brian Hill's going to fit in because he does something that the other guys don't necessarily do, and it's pounded up in between the tackles. Now, don't get it twisted. Both of their runners are physical enough to get in between the tackles and be successful, but neither one of those guys possess all of the things that Brian Hill does in terms of size, even though, you know, I'm a huge fan of Tevin Coleman. But he's a guy that you don't want him to take too many shots because of his injury history. Brian Hill, physical enough, big enough to withstand a little bit more punishment there. But athleticism and solid lateral movement is his next pro. I think his athleticism is solid. It's not great. His lateral movement is solid. It's not great, but it's good enough, better than the average NFL running back. And a guy that's 6'1", it's not the easiest to have great lateral agility, which is what makes a guy like Adrian Peterson, for instance, such a marvel, is because of how big he is, but yet the lateral agility and his ability to start and stop and accelerate. That's not what Brian Hill has, but he does have some solid ability laterally. It could be better, but it could be worse as well. 4.54 40, 10.4 broad. A little bit of the numbers to kind of explain the athleticism. He can run, he can jump, he can do a little bit of everything. That's for certain. Effective downhill runner. I think the Falcons have downhill runners, but I think he can add a little bit of a more physical, tough approach. Not to say that there are other guys aren't, but we saw Freeman, D. Free, get a concussion last year and miss some games. We saw Tevin Coleman be a guy that in college, especially at Indiana, have some issues with injuries, and we've seen him miss some games in his brief career with the Atlanta Falcons. Brian Hill comes in and takes a little bit of that load off of the shoulders of some of your other backs, gives these guys a little bit of a spell and makes these guys a little bit more healthier for the long haul in their NFL careers. So this is a guy I think you can add to the mix and really complete your NFL backfield if you are the Atlanta Falcons. Yaxter gets yards after contact. He's a big guy. He's a physical guy. Does a really good job of running through arm tackles. If you don't bring your hard hat and your lunch pail, you're not going to get Brian Hill on the ground with a half-hearted attempt at a tackle. Outstanding in pass pro. To me, this is his best quality, bar none, not even close. This guy is extraordinary as a pass protector. And to me, the biggest play in Super Bowl 51, I believe it was, is are we on 51? Where I think we're on 51. Don't quote me on that. Could have been 49, could have been 51. Whatever the case may be, the biggest play in the Super Bowl last year, to me, was the missed blitz pickup by Devontae Freeman that allowed Matt Ryan to be hit and the football to be fumbled and the Patriots to scoop that up and get back into the ball game. That to me was the biggest play. If they just punt there, they're probably going to win the game. If Matt Ryan isn't hit, if Devontae Freeman does his job and picks up the blitzing linebacker there, that's a touchdown or a big play for the Falcons if you go back and watch that tape. So this is a guy that will not, I repeat, will not blow a blitz pickup assignment. And he's physical. He's sticking his face mask in the chest of that blitzing linebacker. You won't have issues with that on third down. So, and he also offers you the ability to catch, which is the next pro. He's a pass catcher. So he brings that third down back if you need him to be. But I think this is a guy that, you know, certain possessions, you want him to just be in it as a 3-down back. And I think you can work him into the mix. And if a guy goes down throughout the course of the season, which we've seen with the Falcons in the past, he's a guy that can step in and you won't miss a beat. And he was a workhorse at Wyoming, okay? 650 carries. All right. This is a guy that had 650 carries over the last 2 seasons. 3,491 yards and 28 touchdowns last 2 seasons. So big numbers. But just think about this. 349 carries. Yes, 349 carries in 2016. That's not including the catches that he had as well. So this is a guy that had a very heavy workload at Wyoming the last 2 years, particularly in 2016. You go to his cons. He lacks game-breaking vision for me. The difference between an elite back and a guy that can change the game and just another running back in the NFL is a guy that doesn't have the vision to see a cut, the vision to take a 5-yard run and turn it into a 55-yard run. And sometimes the difference is just seeing that cutback lane and not being a bull and putting your head down and getting what's there, but taking a run and cutting it back and making that decisive cut that allows a play to open up, some blocks to be set up, and all of a sudden you're in the second level, you're off to the races, and now all you got to do is beat the safety. He's not doing that a lot of times. His vision, to me, it's average at best. There's a lot of yards. Speaking of which, leaves a lot of meat on the bones. As a wise man once told me, this is a guy that, translation, leaves a lot of yards on the field. I'm watching him against BYU, a game that they end up losing, and a game that I thought it was nasty outside. The conditions were less than ideal. I thought he could have played better, and to be honest with you, I thought there were some runs to the outside where he just put his head down and got what he thought he could get. Whereas if he just bounced it to the outside, I thought there were some more avenues and lanes and yards for him to pick up. I thought there were some available cutbacks in that game. I just thought that he struggled in taking some opportunities to make big plays in a game where his team was struggling to make big plays. He could have taken it upon himself to make some big plays and really help his team out. And frankly, I don't think he's capable of doing that on a consistent basis. Get stuck in traffic. I think he's a very impatient runner. There's times where you'll see his blockers and he's bumping in and bouncing in and bumbling and stumbling all over his blockers. Sometimes it actually works out in his favor, but a lot of times it works out in the opposite direction and to his detriment. There's one game where he actually runs into his lineman, and because he runs into him, it forces him to jump cut, which actually gets him into the end zone. And there are other games where you're like, he's running to the back of his offensive lineman, and instead of him allowing something to develop and having the patience to allow these guys to do their work, he's getting in their way, and it's forcing it to just be a mumble jumble traffic jam, and he's picking up 2 yards on a play that could have maybe popped for 7 or 12 or more. He's just an impatient runner to me at times. And then finally, a heavy workload. I mean, I just told you 349 carries in 2016. I don't like to put too much stock into that. After seeing Le'Veon Bell get as many touches as he did at Michigan State, I really harped on that hard. I thought that was going to be a big time knock against him moving on to the next level. These guys are young. They're 22, 23, coming into the league, 21 in certain instances. He's coming out as a junior. He'll be fine. I'm not going to beat him up for that. In the 5th round, 156th overall selection, Wyoming running back Brian Hill for me is a double. I think he's a guy that you add to the stable of backs that you already have. He's not going to be any better than those guys. I think you have an elite backfield as it is. You add him to the mix, and I think he makes that backfield complete now as he is a bigger downhill type of runner. And finally, your last 5th round pick, 174th overall, Drake tight end Eric Saubert is the selection. Size 6'5", 253 pounds is his first pro. He's a big kid. He came to college as a 135-pound wide receiver that morphed into a 6'5", 253-pound tight end. So his size is huge, but the athleticism, again, it speaks to the size that he used to be. 6'4", 6'5", 40, 35-inch vert. And I think where you see the true athleticism and what he used to be in terms of size and his movement skills, because it reminds me of like Anthony Davis. If you follow the NBA, this is a guy that, you know, was a point guard in high school at 5'10", 6 feet tall. And then one morning he wakes up, or over one summer, he turns into a 6'10", 5, you know, so essentially a power forward in college. And so, you know, all of a sudden now you go from a sophomore that's a point guard at 6 feet to your junior year being a power forward at 6'10". Eric Saubert comes to Drake as an unheralded, small, skinny wide receiver to a guy that morphs into a big time tight end for them. And the biggest quality he has is his outstanding route running ability. To go back to my previous analogy, when you look at a guy like Anthony Davis, he's got great ball handling skills, and it's because of his stature and what he used to do before he got big, and his skill set had to change. The same thing with Eric Saubert. He's a tremendous route runner because before he morphed into this big 6'5", 235-pound, 253-pound tight end, he was a 135-pound wide receiver giving guys work. And you can see it, man. His route running ability is tremendous. I'm watching him lose. Again, it's Drake, okay? So take it with a grain of salt. But I'm watching him lose linebackers and safeties like it's nothing. I mean, he's turning for school and dropping them off at the bus stop. I mean, it's really bad. So he's breaking these dudes off on corner routes, breaking them off on stop routes, and breaking them off on dig routes over the middle of the field, seam routes, just running by guys, giving them a little stick nod. I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. So it's an outstanding route runner. He can get open. There's no doubt about that. Tremendous catch radius, 33-inch arms to go with that 6'5" frame. So you got a pretty big target when you're throwing a football to Eric Saubert. Also, he's a yakster. They threw some bubble screens to him. They got the football in his hands as much as they could because he was the best player on their team by far. I mean, how many guys are getting drafted out of Drake? So, they got him the football a ton. He made guys miss. He got yards after the catch. It was part of his game. Formational flexibility, again, it's what you see in college football, especially from the tight end position. Guys moving all around. They're splitting them out wide. They're detaching them as U's. They're lining them up in tight as a Y, a traditional blocking tight end. They're lining them up in the fullback position as an H-back. They're lining them up offset. They're doing all kinds of things with these tight ends. No different here with Eric Saubert. And then finally, heavy collegiate production and red zone target. This is a guy that you can throw it up to. 17 touchdowns in the red zone over the last 2 seasons. 190 catches, 2,253 yards, and 21 touchdowns over the life of his career at Drake. So this is a guy that was tremendous at college. Big time numbers, big time target in the red zone, and they utilized him as a strength in that Drake offense. So you go from his pros to his cons. This guy is not a run blocker. He simply can't run block. Don't ask him to do it. He can't do it. All right. He's just one of those guys. I don't think you can coach him up enough to get him to run block. He tries. I just don't think it's in the cards for Eric Saubert at the next level. But this is a pass-catching tight end, you would think, right? Possibly, but you could be wrong. The next con, lacking hand-eye coordination. And I want to clean that up. Because when you say a guy's lacking hand-eye coordination, it makes it sound like he's a big goof and that he can't put things together. His hand-eye coordination isn't what you think it should be for a guy of his skill set getting drafted into the National Football League. There are times where he'll turn around and the ball is on him. And this is a classic example of a guy that doesn't have quick reflexes nor quick hand-eye coordination. When you turn your head as a receiver, and this is not just tight end, this is for a receiver. When you come out of your break, the quarterback is told to have the football on you. It's a timing-based offense. You come out of your break. If they say go 12 back to 10, when your foot hits that 12th step, the quarterback is supposed to let the football go. When you whip your head around and come back to 10, that football should be there. All right, and as a receiver, it's your job to get your head around, come out of your break, and get your hands up and defend yourself. And, oh, by the way, catch the goddamn football. Well, in the case of Eric Saubert, he comes and he'll run a speed out to get his head around. The football's there, but his hand doesn't get up quick enough. And I think it's a lack of hand-eye coordination. There are too many drops. This is the final con here. Too many drops for a guy that you think is a pass-catching savant. He drops the football way too many times. I watched 2 games and I saw at least 4 drops. I watched him in the East-West Shrine game and I saw another 3 drops. And they were talking about him in the East-West game. And Mike Mayock said, look, the big thing here with this kid is he's not going to block in the run game, which I just told you he's not, and I can verify that. But he's a guy that's supposed to catch the football. He looks good. He passes all the eyeball tests. But when it comes down to it, you watch him and he's dropping the football too much. And that's a problem. And I think it's a lack of hand-eye coordination. And I don't know if you can fix that. We'll see, because this guy has talent. He's athletic. He's big. He's a mismatch. In a league where mismatches are the flavor du jour, he's a guy that can create mismatches for you. But what good is it if he's not going to catch the football? He can get open, but if he's going to drop the ball, how does that benefit you? In any event, 5th round, 174th overall selection. Drake tight end Eric Saubert for me is a double. There's talent here. No doubt about it. And if you can get anything out of this guy here, you may have unearthed a 5th round gem. We'll see what Eric Saubert turns out to be in the National Football League for the Atlanta Falcons. So that's the Falcons draft in a nutshell. 6 players. I think they've got some impactful guys on this haul of players, 6 in all. Let's quickly go over their score. 3 triples. Takaris McKinley, Duke Riley, and DeMonte Casey for me, all triples. The rest of the guys in the draft are doubles. Sean Harlow, Brian Hill, Eric Saubert, all doubles. So you get a triples bonus and a doubles bonus. 20 in all. When you're talking points, you divide by the number of picks, 6. It nets you a 3.33 triple for the Falcons. Look, they lit it up last year. Thought they had a fabulous draft last year. I told you that last year. I think this is a good draft. I think it pales in comparison to the draft that they had last season, but we'll see. These guys will come in and have just as big of an impact, if not a bigger one, than the guys last year. I think it's going to be hard to top the draft they had last year, but nonetheless, they have some guys that may be able to come in and help right away. That's going to do it for the Atlanta Falcons and their 2017 NFL Draft. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. I got one question for you. Who's next?